How many people in the room have, sparing your blushes, have heard of this man? Okay, interesting. Quite a few, about a third, to be fair. Well, I'd like to welcome Andy to the stage. Perfect person to talk about news agendas and content and the changes taking place, not only in the global economy, but in the marketing content business. So for those of you who don't know, Andy Lack started his career at, going back a long way now, CBS, famous for winning 16 Emmy Awards. He moved on to NBC and created a thing, or certainly enhanced a thing, called the Today Show. I think you were responsible for making the open studio and all that sort of wonderful stuff. And so leading the news agenda, and latterly at NBC, Andy Lack was the president of the company. Then Andy moved on to Sony Music, where he was the global president of Sony Music. We will touch upon some of Andy's experiences in that role. He famously is the man who said no to Steve Jobs. We'll come to that. Now Andy is the global CEO of Bloomberg Media Group. So an illustrious and award-winning career in news journalism, in content, music, and now in terms of business and high-end information.
Okay, enough already.
Okay. All right.
God bless. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got lots and lots of questions to ask. I'm just going to open up this iPad because questions are coming in from the audience. So please, open up your apps, please. Go into the questioning, find the session, put your names in, and we're ready to go. So I should be keeping this here, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of your questions and voting on the questions. Okay, guys? So let's begin. Let's just set the scene in terms of what Bloomberg is right now. Obviously a business built on 310,000 subscribers to the Bloomberg terminals.
Right.
So an amazing sort of rump of revenues coming in. You've then built a TV business. You have almost 2,500 news and content generators around the world, almost 200 bureau. So it's a pretty sizable content business that's exploded from that terminal business. Bloomberg Business Week, your Business Week acquisition, you now have almost 30 million unique visitors online. And we'll talk a little bit about your Asian development strategy in a minute. So with all of that stuff and all of this content, I'm interested to know, why have you just launched a magazine? Particularly given all of this comment about print declining, circulations declining. So you just launched a quarterly magazine called Pursuits. Why have you done that?
Well, we bought Business Week because we seek to have as much influence with business executives around the world. We seek to be the most influential news organization for business and financial news. So Business Week was a good fit for us in that regard. It was a good opportunity for us because it gave Bloomberg a chance to reinvent that magazine with a brilliant young editor, Josh Tieringal, and bring the transparency to stories and the kind of storytelling that we like to do. If you read the magazine, which is the best way to understand what I'm talking about, and I hope you do. I think we're at 2 million in circ or something like that. And have any of you guys seen it out here? It's good. Check it out. But the business proposition for me was businessweek.com. As a digital property, there was no overlap between Bloomberg.com and businessweek.com. Bloomberg.com is known, and Bloomberg, as many of you may know, is well known for its financial news, for its understanding of markets, for its news gathering around those markets, currencies, commodities, and so forth. Business Week was an opportunity to get deeper with companies and with the people who run those companies. And increasingly, my interest for Bloomberg, the Bloomberg Media Group, which is a consumer-facing group, is to expand our reach amongst the global business executive. And Business Week gave us a great opportunity.
So you've had some success for that. You've extended the circulation of Business Week itself. But my question is also on why have you launched an entirely new magazine called Pursuits in this era when print seems to be, you know, suffering.
Well, advertisers like print. They like the magazine, particularly that glossy magazine, which you can turn elegantly and see in the environment in which luxury advertisers like to place their ads, an environment which is, for them, most appealing. So the luxury space, as well as in the digital world, is a growth opportunity for a company like Bloomberg, where we're well known because of those 310,000 terminals that are placed around the world on some very high net worth individuals' desks, to have a very attractive audience for advertisers, particularly because of the net income that those customers have. So we just want to expand that reach into the consumer space, and the Pursuits magazine.
So you still think there's a value as a sort of content guy? You still think there's a value for print?
Yeah, I don't think. I think the word print is a little anachronistic, like the word TV is. Text is a word that we also grew up with, and you know, my kids who are 13 and 18 talk to me all the time about text and text messaging and communicating via text. And I've learned with video, for example, on the web. I'll make a little plug for my video teams around the world. Our video, Bloomberg Business Video, in the business space, is the most watched video out there. And I think we got something like 12 or 13 million uniques last month. And the reason for that is text on some level. You wouldn't think that with video, but in fact, those headlines that you write, the context for the video, consumers enter that video with a text proposition, with a story that's illuminated through a line of text. So writing and setting up that video, and writing, whether it's storytelling in magazines, whether it's in our electronic print service to our 310,000 customers on the professional side, text and print are still very much a part of our lives. And out here, particularly outside of the United States, text is strong. Inside the United States, it's the big metropolitan newspapers that have declined. So the smaller newspapers, there's a great future. At least Warren Buffett, who is one of our more prominent business fellows, who's pretty shrewd, seems to think small newspapers, in fact, are a great investment.
That's true.
Because all news is local.
Yeah.
And so the more local you get, the more viable that text becomes.
Okay, let's move to TV. Bloomberg TV is expanding in Asia right now. You've just done joint ventures recently in Mongolia.
Yeah.
It's interesting, in Indonesia a few months ago. Mm-hmm. Can you explain how important, you know, the Asian region is to Bloomberg?
No, Asia's huge for us. I mean, first of all, producing news in Asia for this region is very valuable for us. It empowers us with our partners to create a level of content that the whole world is hungry for. So we travel that content across a global channel and get great value out of it. And our audience around the world like to see what have you got in Asia. And if you're really there with local partners, in India as we are with the Reliance Group, in Indonesia shortly with the Idea Group, and in Mongolia, as far afield as that may be, with the Trade Development Bank, who's our partner there. There are big stories in these regions. And pulling those stories out and having a credibility, having an authenticity around your coverage, which is key to Bloomberg's brand. You can't do that alone. You need those local partnerships. So we invest heavily in that content. We invest heavily in those partners, and we're on the prowl all around the world for the right local partner, and it does come back to all news is local.
How are you seeing your revenue growth? I mean, in terms of a percentage of the total revenues of Bloomberg, which are, because you're a private company, it's very difficult to research and determine exactly how you guys do, but are you seeing the percentage of revenues growing from the Asian marketplace?
Yeah.
Kind of where would you see that this year in terms of percent, in terms of share?
We see little things like there's an appetite for an ASEAN report that we're doing with one of our signature anchors, Haslinda Amin. That wouldn't have been the case necessarily 2, 3, 4 years ago, but we see advertisers pushing us to provide that kind of content, package it for them, distribute it for them. We have the reach. We're now in I'm going to say, I hope I don't get shot for this, 15 million homes, something like that, around the region. We've got 26 news bureaus. We've got more reporters out here than most of the text publications combined, and certainly the networks combined. So that rootedness in this region matters to advertisers. And really what we're selling in terms of the integrity of our content is a level of engagement with our audience. Because in the business and financial news space, that engagement, that time spent with us, whether it's on Bloomberg.com or all the platforms that we move this content across, your show of hands on the amount of news you consume on the mobile platform is exactly the experience we're seeing around the world. It's mobile. The behavior is moving to that platform. We can't make enough apps fast enough that have the style and imagination and the ease of use that our audience relies on us for. So I get more feedback on Bloomberg Anywhere, our professional act, or Bloomberg TV Plus in Asia. If you want to see what we're doing live, we're, I think, the only one streaming live video like this, just download BTV Plus Asia, and you'll see the level of video that's attracting for us the larger audience and the engagement with that audience that's valuable to us.
Okay, before I open up to the audience, you've got some wonderful questions coming your way.
Yeah.
I wanted just to reflect on your experiences in the music business. You spent many years running Sony Music. Thank you for giving us AC/DC, still one of the finest bands in the world, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely.
I can't take no credit for that, but I shared that.
I used to actually play drums in an AC/DC covers band, so I'm particularly keen on that. But anyway, that's
very cool.
We'll learn all about that later. And thank you for helping Adele break America, of course. You've done some wonderful things. But you know,
don't credit me with Adele. I wish I could, but I mean, she's a top artist.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate walking out the door that she was the last.
She was the last
act that we signed. But
obviously, the music industry has changed hugely. Yeah, share with us some of your experiences. I'm particularly interested to learn a bit more about your relationship with Steve Jobs and Apple, and give us a bit of a sense of that time and some of the dynamics, and of course the business models that were in play at that time. Share
I
with
think
us.
code for my relationship with Steve Jobs is I was a dickhead.
Andy, I didn't want to mention that. Yes, he called you a dickhead, and in fact, Walter Isaacson writes about that in the
Go ahead,
biography.
say it again, dickhead.
I'm sorry. Don't tweet that. Out of respect for a very senior man, please don't tweet that. Why did Steve Jobs call you a dickhead?
It's pretty much the same reason my son did, walking out the door on my way to Asia. I didn't agree with him about what I hoped the music industry could, in partnership with him, achieve. I hoped we could get a royalty on a few of those iPods that we're selling at a breakneck clip, and I thought that the content I thought that there was no iPod without the content that the music industry provided, and that content had greater value than Steve wanted to ascribe to it. Steve is like, I've never been so flattered to be called a dickhead by a genius like Steve. I mean, he's a brilliant, remarkable man, and the time that I had with him was precious to me. I was a very lucky guy to interact with him.
Why do you think Universal and Warner disagreed with you? Because they were quite happy to go along with the model, the iTunes model.
There was a belief in the music industry that market share mattered in a way that I don't believe it really did. We were all losing some money, big time, to piracy and to the model that Steve kept saying to me is, you don't understand, Andy, you're competing against free. So you've got to live with that and work your way back, claw your way back. And I said, I get that, but I'd like to claw my way back with a little bit more than a 99-cent price point on a song that I thought was a great value proposition for the consumer, and I didn't want to change that. I just wanted to change getting a penny or two for all those iPods that all that music empowered. Yeah. And the music industry was at that time more interested in, we were balkanized, as we'd say in the U.S. So there were 5 companies, and they were like 5 families, and they didn't speak really well with each other. And there had been a long, painful history with Napster and piracy that pulled the industry down. And there wasn't a lot of communication. And the Justice Department didn't encourage much communication because there's a level of legal collusion when companies get together and try to have conversations about how to go to market. So it was a very complicated time for the music business. But that said, I think we could have done as an industry a little bit better in getting, as Steve would have partnered, I think, with us. But the big companies like Universal and Warner, they didn't see it that way. So here we are.
Well, let's go for a question. The highest voted question links rather nicely to your experiences in media. So if we can show that up, it's got 9 votes, just for our people at the back. And the question from one of our audience is this: what's the future of ad-funded versus paywall online media, in your opinion?
Well, there's a future for both. How you harmonize them and which content works well behind a paywall and what content does not. I think there is value in subscription services. After all, essentially the Bloomberg terminal is a hell of a paywall that's really returning quite a great deal of money to the man, Mr. Bloomberg, who created that business model. In content and media, particularly consumer media, I think around generalized commoditized news, there is no value in a paywall. And I think around some niche content, where audiences are searching for a very high level of information in what we would call some vertical spaces, and that might include business or financial news, there are great opportunities for a paywall in which people are willing to pay for something unique. I think even across the board, where you've got paywalls that the general news publications have instituted to protect overall the amount of news gathering and content that they're providing their users, I think with, say, the New York Times, they've got to have a paywall, and they should have probably gone to it a long time ago. But generally speaking, paywalls are going to be challenging unless you've got a very unique level of content that people are willing to.
So if you look at some of the companies with slightly different models, you see their unique visitor traffic has grown more quickly than yours has. If you look at BuzzFeed, which has 30 million uniques, Huffington Post globally probably over 40 million right now. Forbes.com, since it's reversed its business model, is seeing a surge in unique visitors. Does this mean that perhaps Bloomberg might start experimenting with these new forms of content?
Well, be careful about numbers. The law of big numbers doesn't necessarily translate to big money. We've seen that over and over again on the web. Aggregating huge audiences, and that word aggregate is interesting as it relates to the examples you gave, as opposed to creating original content, which people separate and can see adds more value to their life. We still are getting, you mentioned 25, 30 million people. Whether we get 50 million people is less interesting to me than the quality of the content that we're offering 30 million people, and how we extract value for that. I'm feeling pretty good about. There are no perfect models right now in the digital world around content. It's evolving, and no one's got a crystal ball. But if you're creating original content that has value for particularly discrete audiences, and by discrete I mean anywhere between 10 million online, I'm talking about now in a digital world, or 5 million and 50 million. If that content really can only be gotten, for the most part, by you and a small number of competitors, you've got a business. Even in the television business, having more households watching you than any other of your competitors is not nearly as valuable as having a quality of audience, say between 25 and 54, or 18 to 49, which advertisers are more interested in spending on. And if you're engaged with those audiences, as, say, for example, the Fox network was famously and has been through a variety of programming that reached down to a younger audience, you're gonna do well. You're gonna prosper in this world. And for Bloomberg, I'm pretty excited about how we will prosper in the world going forward, because audiences want our content. They know it's by and large, original with us, and they engage with it, which is to say they spend more time with it. That's what engagement means, that you're willing, when you look at one of our videos, to not just look at one, but look at 3, 4, 5 videos. And you do that because your point of entry when you see the first video, you're satisfied. You've got something out of it. It may have lasted 45 seconds, it may have lasted 2 minutes, but those of you who are online a lot, looking at the way video, the way you engage with video, you can move through that pre-roll. An advertiser gets what they want out of it. We get you staying with us because we're satisfying an itch that you have for a minute or 2 or 5 or 10, or you may come back to us for 20 minutes later on. That's the way we're trying to engage with audiences. I'm less concerned with, you know, how many people, the Huffington Post, a very fine organization, I have nothing but respect for them, but it's a different business. Yeah, it's a different game that they're in.
Well, let's quickly to another question then, because it's voting, it's trending well on our system, and that's got 11 votes. It's probably coming up right now, which is how do you measure performance consistently for yourselves and your advertisers across these content sources, both new and old? So this is a question about measurement, you know. So how do you see that?
Well, there are a fair number of measurements, not the least of which folks know comp scores. Nielsen's are coming into the space now to measure audience. I think we can give them, and increasingly a lot of research organizations are going to come in and add value online and in the digital world to measure audience. I think the premium is going to be on how much time you spend with content, and whether that content is an environment. This is important for us, that you're in an environment in which you want, as an advertiser, to have your ads up for a while. So we're not aggregators at Bloomberg. We may engage in some discrete curation because you want us to apply our critical eye to some content out there on the web that you may have missed. But you're not coming to us because there's 8 million stories there, and you know, you scroll down through them as a content aggregator, the way some other sites are. You come to us because you like the environment in which our content sits. And it's a high premium environment, which is our data, our text, our video are authentic and credible and appeal at a level with enough information that is deep and smart, with enough language around that, with enough style and imagination, great guests, great interviews, that you say, I want to check out Bloomberg. And you know, I'm feeling pretty good about being, right now, number 1 or number 2 in our space. My old boss, Jack Welch, used to say, you know, if we're number 1 or number 2, we're gonna have a pretty good run. And right now, that's kind of the world I think Bloomberg's looking at in the business space.
I want to pick the 7 voter over there. This one. Let's put the Bloomberg terminal business aside. Is Bloomberg Media a profit-making business right now?
No. Can we move on? Will be. Next time we get together.
So next year? How long will it take?
Well, profit is important, and we want to manage profit. But we are losing a lot less money than we did 4 years ago, if that means anything to any of you. And probably the only reason my Fanny is still in this seat. But you know, what Bloomberg seeks is much more important at this stage of the game than profits. And we're privileged, those of us who work at Bloomberg, where we are not focused on profits. We are focused on losses, but we are not focused on profit. We're focused on providing a level of content qualitatively that is best in class. That is who we are. We have the benefit of having a professional product for those 310,000 customers around the world who pay a handsome sum that empowers us in the media group to reach out to a broader audience around the world. And increasingly that group online is in the tens of millions of people. And that return on that investment reflects well on the content that we provide back to the terminal. So we think of the terminal as the sun god at Bloomberg, and there are a lot of satellites that are a virtuous circle around that terminal, the media group being one of them, that return the investment that effectively we get as a result of the success of the terminal. That's it, pretty simple. That's a great business model, by the way, if you're lucky enough as a journalist like me to cover the biggest story of my lifetime, which is the global financial crisis that began in 2008. With the resources that Bloomberg has.
Let me just ask you a related question to that. You've just endowed a professorship. Is it Boston University?
Yes, Boston University, yeah.
You've put a considerable amount of your own money into endowing this research. I'll spare your blushes telling, obviously, repeating how much. There's a lot of money. And this new Andy Lack Professorship of Journalism is investigating ways of finding sustainable business models.
Yes.
Now, I just wanted to put you, there seems to be a bit of a crisis of confidence in journalism globally right now.
Yeah.
And I think it's a pertinent question to the brands in the audience who are also getting into the content business.
Yeah.
But, the era of with the Woodford and Bernsteins, the Joseph Pulitzers, the Benjamin Franklins,
Yeah.
Is there a business model out there to sustain quality journalistic content these days? I know this is one of the questions that you'll be asking your professorship to address.
Yeah. Well, I'd say, first of all, there's never been a better time in my lifetime to be a journalist. There's never been a better gig, in my view, than to be a professional journalist. The business model around how you're going to make money, whether it's with a big company or a small company, with a group of like-minded reporters, or a large, disparate group of people who don't know each other well but are connected through the web. How those models evolve, we're just in the early days of figuring that out. I don't know the answer to your question. That's one of the reasons I'm excited about studying it as an academic. There's an old model in media, which effectively Bloomberg is, which is effectively patronage. I have a great patron in the founder of Bloomberg, who cares deeply and passionately about news and information, and the transparency of that information on a global basis. And he can support that passion through the business model we talked about a few moments ago. That always existed. William Paley empowered CBS News at great cost to him to cover the world through pictures that no one had else before done. Television was in its infancy then. We just forget that it takes a minute before these efforts can become profitable. Television news only became profitable in my lifetime, really profitable, with a program called 60 Minutes at CBS. And then that created endless numbers of news magazines that got profitable, and we went through a period of great profitability, then that got pulled back. We will go through a period, in my view, of profitability on the web for young journalists, either because of their own good work or because of umbrella organizations that collect them, pay them appropriately, how they get paid. That's a work in progress, and I don't know the answer to that. If you're lucky enough to work at Bloomberg, it's a pretty good gig, but that's for young journalists starting out. But
okay, we may recruit a few here while you're here. Okay, so I'm afraid we've run out of time. Couldn't get to all of your questions. I hope you'll sort of walk slowly to the exit of the hotel, so people can grab you on your way out.
Sure.
I've spared you the most important and most pertinent question from the whole thing, which is how long are you keeping up the wonderful food in your snack bars in your offices around the world? Thank you for grasping the nettle there with that one, ladies and gentlemen. But thank you very much for your time and illumination. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Andy Lack.
Thank you very much, Charlie. That was fun. Thanks a lot.